By the way, if you haven't heard, I wanted to let you know about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. First, it's free. Secondly, there are tools to record and edit your podcast directly from either your phone or your computer. And the best part to me, in my opinion, is that Anchor will do the distribution of your podcast to a variety of places like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more for you. All that hard work is done for you by Anchor. So that's one less thing, major thing, in my opinion, to worry about. You can actually make money from your podcast with no minimum amount of listeners required. It's just an everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. If you're interested, you can download the free app, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started. And that's Anchor, ANCHOR.fm to get started.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your neat parent host, Zakaria. Inshallah, everyone's doing well. We have several guests today, wonderful guests to start this conversation. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Could you please introduce yourself and tell us your Aman account?
I guess he went out. Okay. I'm Nyla, Coach Nyla. Yes, well, I say five biological children, 7 bonus babies.
Mashallah, mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is Coach Fatima. I have 7 children, 5 bonus babies.
Mashallah, mashallah.
I'm Coach Nazir, and we are all founders of Outstanding Personal Relationships.com, as well as Outstanding Muslim Parents. And I have 10 biological children with these 2 coaches, as well as 2 bonus children.
Mashallah, mashallah. So could you please tell us a bit more about OPR, or Outstanding Personal Relationships, and the motivation behind starting it?
Yeah, absolutely. Outstanding Personal Relationships was really founded to speak about taking our quality of life and raising it. And we recognize that the quality of our life really is dependent upon the quality of the relationships that we have, beginning with ourselves, and then of course our marriages and children and everything else. So we speak in particular on marriage, since that's one of the most powerful relationships and the foundational relationships. But we also speak on polygyny, because polygyny sadly does not get its fair airplay when it comes to marriage. And it's an ancient form of marriage that is found restricted and regulated. And it's the modern day solution to a lot of challenges that our society does have. So there's a heavy emphasis on polygyny, and personal development and marriage. So we decided to start that because we recognize that through our parenting company, which is Outstanding Muslim Parents, that many of the challenges were at the parental level, meaning the relationships between the husband and wife. And if that relationship really isn't solved, it will become extremely difficult to raise healthy, happy, productive children. So we expanded to form Outstanding Personal Relationships a few years ago.
Mashallah, mashallah. So Outstanding Personal Relationships is about how old?
We would say 2 years old officially.
Officially. And Outstanding Muslim Parents, that one is much older, because I definitely remember utilizing those resources. How old is
11 years old now this year.
Mashallah, mashallah. That's wonderful. I definitely remember one thing you said about schools, and I always keep that. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Just that you don't call them Islamic schools because Islam is perfect, and so you call them Muslim schools.
Absolutely.
Because we're not, and we're just human, and we're Muslims, and we're not perfect like Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. So it's definitely stuck, and I love for other people to know that was very helpful information. And it's true because some of the schools are, every school has their challenges that they experience, and our kids as well. And no school is perfect. And it's great for parents to understand that, school's not going to fix our kids and do everything.
Exactly.
Always keep that hint, that tip that you mentioned several years ago. So I just wanted to plug that in. Sorry, I digress.
No worries, it's all good.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Well, no, it's wonderful that those resources are available because particularly within our community, and I don't really like to say that we live in the West, but I mean, most people say that we're in the West, and even if we have backgrounds in other countries, but just living in the West, whether you're an immigrant or a native of a Western country like United States or Canada or the UK, there are issues that people encounter because they are practicing Muslims. And I do feel like that is something that is wonderful, that you're providing resources and services for folks who might need that. And I'm pretty sure there are many. So it's definitely, mashallah, may Allah continue to make it something that is beneficial for the Muslim community. And it's wonderful. I mean, so my paternal side is actually from a Muslim country where obviously polygyny is so prevalent, and it's, it's just normal like water. And my maternal side is actually from a majority Christian country, but it's at the end of the day, it's actually acceptable to have for the men to have girlfriends or other families. And so it's actually ironic that it's not acceptable from an Islamic perspective because it isn't a Muslim country. But I'm just curious if there is something that maybe your children have experienced being in the West, like what's been their perspective, or what's been the perspective that you've experienced from your kids, or what have they told you? Have they been treated differently because they're in a family with two mothers, or if they've been in a situation where even other members of our own community, our ummah, have maybe treated them differently because they're here in the West and not in like a Muslim country, or in just the fact that they're here in the West, have they been treated differently from Muslims or non-Muslims? What's been your experience?
Just for quick clarification, because again, we are in the West.
Yes.
Though I know what you mean when you say two mothers, we just have to be clear that it's not, when someone hears two mothers, they're thinking about women are married to each other.
Yeah. Sorry.
So as sad as that is, clearly we don't mean that.
Not at all.
Their husband, their dad has two wives, basically, or they have two moms that their husband is married to. Sad that we have to make that clarification.
Yeah, I wasn't. I'm sorry. Apologize for that. If that came out incorrect, that was not.
They have two dads nowadays, right?
She's innocent.
They have two moms, two dads, all of that stuff. So we just need to, sadly clarify. But yeah, indeed.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have to. Yeah, we definitely don't want to come across that way, but and definitely in my father's country, we just say it as a mother rather than like saying a stepmother. So you have so I'm still coming from that perspective where I have immigrant parents, even though I was raised in the United States, we just see it as mother. But then if your parents divorced and then you got a new mother or a stepmother, then we would call that one the stepmother. You see what I mean? So it's a little bit different in English. When I translate it to English, I'm like, oh yeah, I still see it as mothers. So, but yeah, definitely within the Western context, it can be viewed as something else.
Yeah, well, that's why we kind of use like the term bonus, right? We say bonus mom, bonus children and things like that. It's even in the West, we have this stigma of step anyway.
Yeah,
right.
the evil stepmother, the evil stepsisters, those type of things. But
Yeah.
to answer the question, at least, that I've experienced with the children, not the children are children, so their whole personality and just the way they are, like, people, love them, period. So it's not a weirdness, and a lot of people, that's not, well, with, I said I have 5 biological children and 7 bonus babies. Well, the little ones, we call them, the little ones. I have an 8-year, I'm sorry, he is not 8 anymore. He's not because he'll be 10 like next month. I just made him 8.
Yeah.
But a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old who are from Coach Nadir. So that we share. So they are still young, so they're not experiencing the anybody having any type of questions to them, so to speak. Now, my daughter, from a previous marriage, she'll be 16, and then I have a son,
Mashallah,
who will be 21, inshallah. So now my son, he gets questions, but he gets questions like their energy and their attitude and just the way they are attracts people. So who their parents are is, or who their parents, I guess, are married to, type of thing, is not the topic of conversation, because they just love if it's any type of topic of conversation, is more of, wow, they're raised, so well, and they're well-rounded, and these things like that, mashallah. So alhamdulillah, that's what I usually get. Like my daughter, her friends know that, her, she's in a polygynous family.
yes.
That's nothing weird or new to her. Now I have family or relatives who aren't Muslim, and they don't treat them weird or anything like that. A lot of any type of weirdness came towards me. They never directed it towards the children. So, but now, they understand that this is the way of life, and, this is, I mind my marriage, they mind theirs. I mind my life, they mind theirs.
Yeah.
And they understand it, and they don't have anything to say either way anymore. But they never experienced any issues with my children being treated differently because of it.
Mashallah, alhamdulillah.
My experience is a little bit different because my daughters are much older than my bonus daughter. I mean, they were back then, so they're, at school maybe, or sometime a little nosy mom might come up to my daughters and ask a little pressing question, and I had to check a couple people, because that's what I do when somebody asks my children questions that are designed for adults.
Totally.
And I told them, don't ask my daughters questions that are designed for me. You ask me. And then I would shut it down because it's not their business. So they experience more negativity early on. But now I think because we've been really great as a family at having each other's backs and defending ferociously our family and what we practice. They don't have to agree with it, but I've always said they must respect us as people, especially when you're talking to us face to face. So people kind of treat you how they see you treating each other. So if they know that if they come to me with something about my co-wife, that I'm gonna get on them. So they don't do it, And I've been, even in maybe my darkest moments, if someone tried to throw some shade, I would just say, don't do that. Don't do that, because it's like throwing fuel on a fire that you didn't create as a family.
Yeah.
And so we've been really good at kind of sticking together and teaching other people how to treat us as a family. So they know, don't say nothing to them that's negative. Don't come for any one of them, because they're going to kind of, get you together, set you straight. And we just don't allow that. And that's one thing my older daughters have said that they love that we do as a family, is we say, don't say that about my bonus mom, don't say that about my mom, you know, and I love that we say bonus, because I didn't even think of it this way, but my older daughter, my second oldest daughter, said when they say, is Coach Nyla or Sister Nyla your stepmother?
Yeah.
I said, why does that bother you? And she said, because it looks like you and Abu got divorced, not that he took or got married again.
Yeah.
We don't like to say took another wife, but that he got married again. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, because I grew up with the mentality that it did mean there was a divorce implied.
Yeah.
So I told her, I'm like, I didn't really think of it the way she did as a daughter. You know, I just thought of it as a term that I didn't have the connection that she had to that word. So I'm really glad that we say bonus babies, bonus mom.
Yeah, it's definitely an addition. It's a blessed addition. And
Right.
that was wonderful that your kids are so brilliant. Subhanallah. MashaAllah, they're so brilliant, and their perspective is so important. And that's so wonderful that she expressed
Right.
herself, and she expressed her perspective to you,
Yes.
that you were able to clarify it, and, you know, and then she was able to positively move forward, understanding that, oh yeah, so we're not experiencing a divorce or a broken or break in the family. We're experiencing
Right.
a growth and an addition and a blessed bonus. So mashallah, that's great.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. And that they have that ability to, you know, have the open lines of communication, which I'm sure is one of the things from OMP that people can benefit from, just how to parent in general. So I'm sure that's
Right.
an attribute that you guys have instilled in them, mashallah. And Coach Nasir, I'm not sure if you've had additional experiences, or have the boys or girls come to you like, hey, Dad, there's this kid at school who's like, or this kid at madrasa who's like asking me all these questions, or have they been cool? I feel like people treat men and women differently.
I haven't had the same experiences in my wives, with my children complaining about anything. So nah.
Yeah.
Some people they test, some people they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that people treat women differently
Exactly.
than the men. It's even if you go to the mechanic just for an oil change, like they'll try to upsell you on like 5 billion things. But like if my husband goes, they just do what he asks, like just change my oil. But if it's like, you want your filter, you want this. So I just think it's universal. So I was curious, and I'm also not surprised that Coach Nasir did not experience the things that Coaches Nyla and Fatima experienced. So subhanallah, it's always going to work out that way.
Yeah, I always used to tell people when they'd ask me, why did he marry again? I said, why don't you ask him that? And they wouldn't. So, you know, they shut that all the way down. Never. But I'll ask you. I'll ask him. I dare you.
Yeah. I know, the audacity.
Right.
The audacity. Now, on a side note, is it particularly non-Muslims, would you say? Or is it just kind of the whole spectrum, everyone, our ummah and outside our ummah, who are asking these, you know, kind of bold questions? Or would you say that it's particularly
for me,
just non?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, it was like Coach Nyla said, it was my non-Muslim family members, because my mother and my father are like, what is going on? My grandmother they were all like, what's happening?
Yeah,
what's happening? So they had some very pressing questions. And then you have, you know, Muslims so for me, it was kind of on both ends. But I think once you've been in a community as long as we have, people are going to ask.
Yeah.
Because they fall in love with the family. So then they go, okay, well, what's going on? What, you know, and then these natural questions do come, but then you got that small percentage of people that are really nosy and they don't mean you any good.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, you know, early on. Now everybody's so used to us. It's like, you know, it's not a thing.
Yeah. And I think that if there is something, I know Coach Nasir touched upon it in the beginning of our conversation, that what do the children call each mother? So like I said, like culturally, we call them a stepmother if your father has been divorced. and then now remarried, and then now that's your stepmother. But if your father has 2 wives, we would call them still our mother. So I'm just curious, how are you called by your children?
They normally say Umi Nyla or
Oh.
Umi Fatima, the younger ones. So they say Umi Fatima, Umi Nyla, and the older ones say Sister Nyla or Sister Fatima.
Okay, mashallah, mashallah. And do the siblings call their own mother mom as well?
Umi.
We say Umi.
Yeah.
We're both called Umi by our children.
Okay. Totally, mashallah. I think that's super cute. Yeah, there are schedules, quote unquote, between your wives. Are there schedules for the children?
You mean as in what?
Like, for example, I don't know your schedule, but let's say, for example, every other night you're with Coach, you're at Coach Nyla's house, you're at your house with Coach Nyla, and then every other night you're at your house with Coach Fatima. Do the kids have a particular schedule, or is it like I could see dad whenever? I mean, mashallah, you guys live.
Well, one is that since I work from home, I'm there anyway. And you also have to look at the age range of the children because Coach Fatima, our oldest, is 25.
Mashallah.
So she doesn't sit at home with us anymore. Then we have two more in their 20s. And our oldest daughter is 18. Then, on my bonus children's side, my bonus son, he no longer stays under the same roof anymore. So you have to look at the ages. So basically, you're going from 25 years old all the way down to 3 years old. Now, so the younger ones, the boys, as we call them, affectionately, looking at their ages right now from almost 10 years old to 3 years old, they're playing with each other. So this is a group of 4. All right. So with these boys, they're at each house every day, pretty much. So for example, my son, I wanted to play with his brother and they want to play outside. So he called like, hey, can my brothers come over? Yesterday. So they came over, they played several hours and everything. And, we go to Taraweeh together, we go to Salatul Fajr together, so they can go and move really kind of as they please. But we do have a schedule so far as homeschooling schedule, Quran, classes and everything like that. And we have our family meetings on Thursdays where we're all together as an entire family, on a weekly basis, which of course is important. So there's not a schedule like dad time at this day and time. No, there's not, but they can see me anytime and I work from home. So they see me all the time. Anyway,
Mashallah. That's wonderful. That sounds actually perfect. But alhamdulillah, I think it also helps that you live close. I think that there are families that there aren't as close as you. You guys are pretty much like walking distance apart, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Mashallah, mashallah. Yeah, definitely. I've heard of scenarios where either the one family is in one country and the other one is in another country. So that's obviously really hard. Or it can be that they're in driving distance away, so it's not as easy for the siblings to get together or have access to their father. So it's just kind of like extra effort needed to bridge that. So mashallah, your setup or scenario is almost ideal. Perfect, mashallah.
One of the things though too, just even on that, where alhamdulillah, we're very blessed to have it that way. But I was just thinking, like, okay, just even with COVID and all the other stuff where it was very difficult, or it's difficult for families to see one another, or be with one another. My relatives, like my brother and everything like that, my siblings, we used to get together for their birthdays. Now this is my non-Muslim.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, astaghfirullah, haram. No.
No, but we used to get together, and with my youngest brother, I have a 10-year-old brother. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just making everybody 2 years young. My brother just turned 12, like a couple of days ago.
I have one of those too. Yeah, I do. I have teenage
I'm not the
siblings.
only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, no, not at all. At all. I
And
have teenage siblings, yes.
and the first
Mashallah.
year we did a kind of almost like a Zoom, or I think it was like house party or something it was called,
Okay.
thing on the screen. And I was thinking about that for families who can't get together
Totally.
like we do, that don't have that, that have
Proximity. Yeah,
that close proximity, right? Where
exactly.
it's like they can still connect in a way where they're scheduling this time where they're talking to their siblings. A friend of mine in a totally different country, we'll schedule some time for our kids to actually meet each other
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
never really met each other. And I was like, it'd be nice for the kids to meet each other. So
yeah,
they start Zooming each other and things like that. So, I mean, like you said, it takes more work,
yeah,
but, to be able to combine, to combine families and to combine households into one family,
yeah.
it's good to find those extra ways, and
Mhm.
alhamdulillah we have the technology to do so.
Yeah, alhamdulillah for everything. That is wonderful.
Mhm.
Definitely, I'm sure you all admit that you're like a little bit spoiled because of the close proximity. And I'm sure you're just like, alhamdulillah, every day. Like, this little one could just run down the block, or this one can, just meet up as frequently or as often as they'd like. And then also, as Coach Nasir said, he works from home, which is I think an absolute blessing, because that's like cherry on top. Is like, you know what,
Indeed.
dad is always there. So mashallah, that's great. And alhamdulillah for your family to have that. I also wonder if there are, as with every household, whether there are 20 kids or 5 kids, there's sibling rivalry. It's innate. It's just going to happen. And whether it's in the same household or in over multiple households, there is sibling rivalry. We're not going to deny that obvious human nature. So we're not any different just because we're Muslim. But I was just curious if there was any type of rivalry among your kids, the ones who are home or the ones who are not even at home,
The ones that are not home, that those girls and my bonus son, they're fine.
Mashallah.
There's no such thing.
They're
You
mature
know,
now. They don't have
yeah,
time for that
they
petty
don't have
stuff. Yeah.
time for this stuff. They're
That's
too
my
busy paying
crayon. You took
bills
my
and getting
crayon.
through life. So no, they don't have time for that. But I think there's been like some natural sibling rivalry. However, we're really good at squashing anything that gets like vicious. If it gets to a point where, okay, you guys are not being very nice to each other, and it's really rare.
Yeah.
They're brothers, so they'll get into it over cars, or especially with my son Shuaib, I have to tell him sometime because he's a little OCD, and I know he gets that from me. I'm like, listen, they can play on your parking lot. I'm not gonna, you
Yeah.
gotta learn to share. You gotta calm down and
Mashallah.
play with your brothers nicely. So they do have like their little natural, really the brotherly thing,
Totally.
So they're brothers. They're not, one's better or one is treating the other one worse or whatever. They're brothers. They do that naturally anyway. So we're really good at, if anything gets messy, which is not often, we jump on that. So if there's something going on with the boys
Yeah.
and I don't know exactly how their mother would talk to them about it,
Yeah.
I'll say, well, I'll be talking to Umi about it or Abu about it. And Abu's usually, in either house anyway. So they'll run and tell him or they'll run and tell us. And we try to be as diplomatic as possible.
Yeah.
But I try to stop it, and we all try to stop it before it really starts, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Because we just drive you guys are brothers, your family,
Right.
so that
End of
doesn't
the
come
day, that's
up.
the most important part. Yeah. Totally.
So we just keep, don't do that to your brother. I don't say don't do that and name a name. I'll say don't treat your brother that way, or, because I want them to, I think we all do. We want them to feel like there's no division or no dividing lines because there's different moms. Because we all know what that does to children.
Totally. That's really
And
important.
one of the
The
things
language you use. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Coach Nasir. Sorry.
one of the things that we also utilize is, as we're training and we're teaching them with Islamic tarbiyah, we take different stories back in Islam. So when we talk about Prophet Yaqub, and we talk about Prophet Yusuf and his brothers, and we talk about that jealousy in particular because two of his brothers was from a different wife since he had four wives.
Yes.
You know, we discussed this story, we discussed jealousies and different things as well, just as a reminder to make sure they're paying attention to what's going on and not to easily fall into the traps of Shaitan as well. So we bring it back to their identity as Muslims and to make sure, again, that, you know, they're aware of it so they can become more conscious of it. Because they're children, and again, we know the prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing until 25 years of age. So they're going to be impulsive and competitive and have their testosterone and everything like that. That's normal.
Yeah.
But, you know, we want to at least always bring the relevance of Islam into their lives by sharing different stories with them and asking different lessons and helping them figure things out on their own. So alhamdulillah, you know, it's always good to bring it back so they can see Islam in action.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And alhamdulillah, they have coaches, experts as parents, because I think that is another beneficial thing. You know, sometimes after you have the first kid, you just kind of feel like, how am I going to change this diaper? I don't even really know what I'm doing. And then after, you know, maybe the second kid, sometimes you still don't even know what you're doing, or you feel like there's this sense of like, I'm not doing it correctly. So mashallah, they have coaches, they have some experts as parents to just, you know, bring things back into perspective as, you know, which is important, just particularly referring it back to the Quran, referring it back to, and like Coach Nasir said, it's just their tarbiyah, so that they are just guided in the right direction. But it also helps to have coaches as parents. So I'm a little halal jealous there, but mashallah, that's a bonus.
Alhamdulillah, but we also point them to different things. My children, you know, our children, they love Zaki. They
Yeah,
love,
my
different
kid.
things. So,
Alhamdulillah.
yeah, so there's different things that we point them to, and it's so funny because I was gonna definitely make mention of that because it's pretty much equal opportunity competitiveness. So it doesn't.
Yeah. It sounds like the OJ trial sometime with them boys.
Alhamdulillah. And it's really good because a number of things too, because we still allow them their competitive side too, that competitive nature. Like Coach Fatima said, when if it gets out of hand, if it gets, you know, too much, we make sure, you know, we nip it in the bud, and of course bring them back, you know, to understanding, you know, their Islamic roots, you know, there's their adab and everything like that. So, you know, alhamdulillah, it was really good though, because you watch it and you see it and you're like, okay, yeah, that's just brothers being brothers and that's boys being boys, you know, for the most part, because it's, you know, it's definitely this healthy competition, you know. Alhamdulillah, yes, you know, you have the coaches, but we went through so much like study in order to be able to do that, because there's not really an official manual on how to raise children. There's not. So when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, trying this and studying this and working on that. And, you know, alhamdulillah, when the children see us behaving in a way that is very mature and, you know, it's just to mirror for the most part what their parents do. So they don't see the art, they don't see, you know, this rivalry and this back and forth. They don't see a rivalry between my co-wife and I. They don't see arguments, and we know that we would disagree. We're humans. We all don't think the same. We all don't have the same, you know, likes and dislikes and everything for the most part. But we do have different rules that we set, and a lot of those rules are: if we have a disagreement, those things are not going to be displayed in front of the children. Those things, even if it's about the children, it's not going to be displayed in front of the children. The children know they would never be able to pit any of us against one another.
Yeah.
So whether we're on the same page or not, the children will always think that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So, you know, alhamdulillah, because of that example, and us as well, they behave the way they do, I believe.
MashaAllah, that's wonderful. And that's exactly the perfect thing for folks to just remember is that, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that we are their example. So how we behave, they're always watching us. You know, you think that they're not watching, but you could be on the phone, or they could be on the phone or building Legos, and you could say, okay, the sky is red. And then 2 hours later, they will just repeat what you just said. And you're like, I thought you were watching Zachy or playing Legos. I didn't notice you were paying attention. They are super absorbent. Mashallah, they just pick up on everything. So definitely being, or having the adhab, having the correct adhab within yourselves or among the adults is definitely the best building blocks for them as children to see. Mashallah, you definitely said it very well. Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, and I would say for sure that leads to another question that could be quite controversial. Like I said, my parents are from 2 different countries and they have 2 different religions. But alhamdulillah, my paternal side is Muslim. And in one household, culturally, it was like, don't go into the living room. There were just different rules. It was like plastic on the sofa, you know, and then in another culture, it was just like, yeah, you know, you don't wear shoes in the house. You don't do this. You eat with your right hand. So I'm just curious if there are different rules in the different houses, you know. So this, like I said, could be a controversial question because I don't want to spill the beans, you know, like I don't want the kids to get caught like, oh, you could jump on the bed at this house, but you can't jump on the bed at this house.
No, I wanted to make sure, you know, there was initially, again, when you're looking at us right now and we're talking about being part of polygyny after, I guess we didn't really go into our history. Coach Fatima and I have been married for 26 years and Coach Nyla and I for 11 years. Right, so polygyny has only been 15 years of our marital relationship. But with that being said, again, we're into like, you know, our chapter 11, so it wouldn't be wise to compare chapter 1 or 2. Totally. But the rules from my perspective should always be the same. It's going to be equal really across the board. So I had to make that known to my wives, of course, because I'm like, okay, well, they might be feeling, okay, well, this is his son from the other house. Yes, my bonus baby, but I don't know if I could just discipline him if he said something wrong, or I send him to dad. And you know, we had to get those ground rules established. I'm like, listen, whatever's good for one is good for the other. We're not going to do oh, you're over here, so you have this special treatment, and you're here, you have this special treatment. Yeah. We're going to abolish that kind of right away and just had a conversation regarding that, regarding that, speaking with my wives, because that can be tricky. You know, going back and forth, or somebody feels, well, hold on, that's my child, or I don't want them around another person. You know, those types of things and little nuances I didn't really want to have causing any type of barriers or blocks. So it was having those discussions and making sure that they understood where I was coming from and also addressing whatever concerns they had. And again, we were all on the same page as recognizing the ultimate goal is to be outstanding as a family and to reach gender. You know, you're going to do that with fairness and, you know, being across the board. They're not going to be children long, as we can see with 4 or 5 adult children now. You know, it moves fast. Time doesn't wait for anybody. And these gray hairs in my beard definitely tell me that story.
There it is. I'd like to add to that. There are not different rules, but there's different boundaries within the homes. So they're not identical, meaning that I have adult daughters in the house, so the little ones cannot just barge in their rooms because they're girls. And one of our daughters is married, so she might be on the phone with her husband. And as much as they love to play with our 3rd oldest daughter, when they come to my house, it's Coach Fatima for anybody that's wondering. Sometimes we get confused, you know, especially when there's audio, but they have to knock, and we all have to knock. I have to knock on the door before I enter. And our 3-year-old, my bonus baby, he'll just barge right in, and that's fine because he's a baby and he can't do anything with the conversation she's having with her husband. So there's different things as far as the girls being older, if they're changing in their room or whatever. Since there's more girls in my particular home, I'll tell the boys, wait a minute, knock, hold on, stop. They're probably, you know, and they have to put their certain personal feminine things out of their way because they are boys, and we want them to have free reign of the house. However, they can't necessarily have free reign of the house because of the grown-up adult daughters that are there, if that makes sense. So there's
totally
a
does.
couple little things like that, but everything else is pretty much run the same.
Cool,
Right. And I
cool.
was gonna pretty much piggyback off that, and it's pretty much similar. And that's the thing where when it comes to as far as discipline goes and things as far as that, we're on the same page. We meet together as a family at our family meetings. Anything that we need to discuss, we discuss, whether it's learning things, whether it's disciplinary things, whether it's just, growth and, growth things or fun things, whatever the case may be. We're constantly getting together and have a meeting of the minds with that. And of course, like Coach Fatima said, it's just the environment is different.
Yes.
So even where, because it's more older children in that household, Coach Fatima has beautiful breakables, we'll just say.
Oh yeah.
And so there's certain things. My house is more childproof because I have very little.
Yeah.
The toddler,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
You know, play with
Exactly.
the finger paints and the crazy things and everything like that because it's more childproof. So
Yeah.
it's also letting them know that too. So
Yeah.
that's the thing where I do have that conversation. And we all have that conversation as well, where it's like, okay, there's certain things that you cannot do because, this is how things are set up. So I want them, so when it comes to that point, you want them to understand it, where it's not like, oh man, I can't do this and I can't do that over there, or I can't do this, but I can do this over here. It's like, well, things are set up differently because it's more baby proof over here.
Right.
Things are breakable. So you want to make sure that you're being very respectable about what's going on in the house. And no, you can't create couch forts over there because
Nah.
certain things that you got to be careful with, So
Yeah, exactly.
and they
My
understand
older
that.
kids would be like, why is there a fort in the middle? Like, we need to get in and out of the house. So, I mean,
stuff everywhere.
Coach Nyla has the fun house. I have the boring grown-up kids house. So my house is very quiet and boring. Her house is the fun house. So my son Shuaib, our baby, he go over there and he'll get the glitter, the glue, the construction. I mean, he could just go. He loves it. So it's okay though, and I want people that are in polygyny that have children, that have many children, to understand that like my co-wife was saying, the environment might be different, but the rules are generally the same, and that is important.
MashaAllah. No, it's good. That's definitely something to keep in perspective because, like you said, the dynamics are just different because of the age span or the age range of the children or the folks who are present in that in each household is not going to be mirrored or completely photocopied in the each household. So yeah, that's a great perspective for folks to remember. MashaAllah, that's great.
And you let them understand that they get the best of both worlds. So
totally.
Yeah,
that's the only way I see it. Alhamdulillah for everything. No, that's wonderful. I definitely think it sounds like the best of the both worlds. And I know that everyone has had, and maybe continue to have parenting challenges, whether it's, going through the teenage years and then this one going through the teething and then this one going through the wetting the bed or just everything that parents go through. But was there a particular challenge or were there particular challenges as a family as a whole, a family in polygyny that you experienced that you felt like was particular to your family or how did you resolve it?
I think for me, the hardest part for me was the transitioning. So I had a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, 9-year-old, and they were like, wait a minute, hold on. But the thing that helped was actually seeing what their perspective was and asking them questions and not answering the questions for their father. So if they had a question for him, I would want to make the environment where I would say, okay, well, I think you should ask him then. And it's okay to ask him because he wants you to ask him, and you should ask him, and you have the right to, so to create a cushion for those transitional ages was difficult, but I had to think, this is not impossible.
Yeah.
It was about being responsive and versus reactive. Because I'm like, okay, if I react, and I keep reacting to things, that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, you're 15, you're 13. The 9-year-old had to be handled differently because she was 9 at the time. But to just tell them to honestly communicate how they felt without adding to how they felt and subtracting from how they felt. So they didn't have to carry my hurt or my pain or whatever the case may be. But I wanted them to have an organic conversation with their father that they needed to have. And I thought that was important for me not to be there in the way of that.
Yeah.
So if the 15-year-old, the oldest, wanted to talk to him, I didn't need to be there. At first, I'm like, I kind of need to be there. And then I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't need to be there at all because I don't want the child to alter their answers based off me being there.
Yeah.
Or based off what they think I want to hear them say.
Yeah.
So one of the greatest things to do, so if the transitioning is hard, was to let the kids know that they're in a safe space to ask questions and get some answers. And if we didn't know, it was okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll find out.
Because that's still their father, you're still their mother.
Exactly.
And nothing really changed in that respect. You didn't lose the father, you didn't lose the mother. So they're still available
I think,
to listen.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was going to say. Coach Nadir had said to them, he said this to me, and it stuck in the mind of all the girls, because the boys were so small, they didn't know what was going on.
They're like, do I get more candy?
They're
Okay,
like, what's the problem?
Great.
The boys are like, this is great. What's the problem?
What's the problem?
Just more people to play with.
I know. I get
for
more
the girls,
boys eat
for
a
them,
lot.
I think, alhamdulillah, looking back on it and seeing where we all are now is important, and alhamdulillah. But I remember Coach Nadir told them, he said, I'm still available to you all. And they still remember him saying that because part of it is going, he's not going to be around every other day. And it just wasn't the truth.
Yeah.
And I think one thing Coach Nyla did too for the girls was, and these girls are older, they're grown. And she was saying that, I think she specifically said it to our second oldest daughter. And she was like, I'm not trying to replace your mother. And that's what my daughter needed to hear. I already knew that. But coming from her, it meant a lot to our daughters because, the word spread fast.
Exactly. And it pierces.
I'm not trying to be your mom.
It totally pierces. It totally pierces.
Yes, it helped them so much with their healing because you never know what kids are thinking. Exactly. Now, I knew better. I knew she wasn't trying to be, but they were struggling with it.
Yeah.
So when she said, no, I'm here to help, but I'm not trying to replace your mom. That's a powerful statement. And I think a lot of women and families in polygyny can benefit from that kind of honesty.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, that's profound. That's piercing. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And it was said,
Indeed.
and she heard it, and not through a
She heard
messenger.
Not and she received it. And she received
well,
it.
Yeah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. It's interesting because that actually was one of my the challenges, the parenting, personal parenting challenge that I was going to actually bring up, because I can feel energy like strongly, and when my type of thing is that we're one big family and this is how it should be, but I did not want to force my what I wanted on anybody for the most part. It's like, okay, it's a transition. But the energy, I knew who I needed to talk to. That was the thing, is like, I'm like, okay. I remember talking to Coach out there and I'm like, okay, this is, I want them to know that this is what, and I want them to know me. I don't want them to have like just these ideas and they just not understand and not know. He's like, well, have a conversation. Like, do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but it was, I felt that because, and that was the whole parenting thing where he said he had to have these conversations where it's like, it was this permission, because I'm like, these aren't my biological babies, you know, they always have been my kids in my heart, but they're not my biological babies. So I need permission from their biological parents to say yes. Go ahead. So he's like, "Would you like go ahead and make the conversation?" So I took her to the store. I was like, because I know she had to run some errands. So I was like, okay, we'll just do that. I ran some errands with her, and I had this conversation, and it was so freeing for me. As well as for her, because I was like, is there anything you want to ask me? Is there anything you want? This is your floor. You can have whatever. She said, I'm not much of a talker, so.
Every teenager in the world, but yeah.
And it felt so good because she said, she was like, look, if you get this energy from me, or you get this, it's not that I don't, that I don't like you, or that is, I have an issue with you. I'm glad. And she said, I'm glad we had this conversation. Glad you told me these things. So, but I'm not much of a talker, so you're not going to hear a whole lot from me.
Yeah.
Ever since that conversation, everything has gotten exponentially better. And the energy is just a beautiful thing. But of course, like we tell people, you cannot compare your chapter 1 with our chapter 11, chapter 10, chapter anything, because it took that work, and it took the struggle and the ups and downs of it. But alhamdulillah, we are a stronger family because of it.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
I don't know, did Coach Nasir want to shed some additional light, or khalas? Well, it's definitely obviously it goes without saying that our ummah is diverse ethnically and geographically, mashallah, that so many Muslims living all over the parts of our wonderful earth, and that we can practice, or they are allowed to practice polygyny anywhere and everywhere because of our deen. And I was just curious if there was an Islamic perspective other than polygyny, which is very Islamic, that you keep at the forefront. I mean, because if it isn't, it's pretty obvious that obviously that's at the forefront. It's family who practices polygyny, and there are the components that make your family even stronger. Is there anything else, or is there anything in particular that you would say other than polygyny that is at the forefront Islamically in your parenting?
One of the main things is that we are all brothers and sisters in Islam, and we are accountable. We're going to be held accountable for how we treat each other. So, definitely, that is something that is kept in the forefront. And I tell the children that a lot, even when they're fussing at each other and other things. I'm like, don't just look at this person as your sibling that just getting on your nerves right now. This person is still, this is your brother or sister in Islam, and you will be held accountable for how you treat your brother and your sister. So be mindful of that. And the same thing when it comes to our children, they're a man to us. So it's like, we have to, as much as they could be, a challenge and a fitna, there's still a gift, a gift. We have to make sure that we are taking care of that and doing our parts as parents.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm good now.
Alhamdulillah.
One of the things we talk about and kind of keep at the forefront, and it's not separate from Islam, because there's really nothing that can be separate from Islam, but it's something that we call mortality motivation. We're going to die, and it's going to be sooner than later. So it's best that we plant the seeds that we can plant, we cultivate them while we can, so that there's a good harvest, so that later on the day that is going to matter more than any other time, we are reunited and can really live, a full life, inshallah ta'ala, and Jannatul Firdaus. So it's more the mortality motivation. So obviously Islam is our foundation. We know we're going to die, so we want to be the best that we can be, correct ourselves what we're wrong. And if we have opportunity to correct ourselves, that means Allah gave us time for tawbah, for seeking forgiveness, for getting things right, and it's not over. So that means there's an opportunity to be optimistic and to get on track, whether it's a parent, whether it's a husband, wife, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Just utilizing, knowing that we are going to go. That's why I referenced the gray hairs that constantly pop up every day in my beard as a reminder from the one who created me that time is still moving. And that time is still moving. You're headed one way towards a grave. And, inshallah ta'ala, we want to make sure we are on that proper side and get the forgiveness of the one before we meet him. And knowing that and imparting that in our children, they know that they're still on a journey as well. So whether it be watching different conflicts throughout the world that's going on, or something from their own city with teenagers being killed or sicknesses taking over, we know that ultimately that mortality motivation, if we fear Allah Ta'ala, and as has said, the Prophet thought about, death over 100 times a day, that can help keep us on the right track, and at least being conscious or self-aware in the things that we do, whether it's, again, enriching our relationships or our parenting and, or our personal growth. So that's another thing that's always with us. Even when we leave here today and get on the road, we'll be thinking about whether or not we do make it home, or there's an accident, or our guardian angels are with us protecting us. So to be cognizant of that one fact that is going to reach all of us at one time or another, but we know it will be sooner than later. I know that that's one of the things that helps at our family meetings and our discussions, being open about it, being clear about it, and seeking out Allah Ta'ala's mercy as well.
Yeah, inshallah. If you have any tips, because you've given several over our conversation, I don't know if you have any additional tips, parenting tips, polygyny parenting tips for our neat parent community.
One is to really list your values and pit them against each other to see what your top core values are. So once we know what our core values are, we begin to understand how we operate, as well as understanding your personality type. And one of the ones that we like to discuss is the MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs typology indicator, to really find out, what things make you tick when it deals with compatibility, or your parenting type, or best type of jobs or careers or whatnot. There's so many different tools that are available to us, but if we commit to personal growth, that's going to be the number one thing that's really going to determine, again, the quality of your life, your relationships, and how you enjoy this gift that was given to us for a short time on this earth.
Yeah, that's profound. Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what can be translated as the word of wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Wherever he finds it, he is most deserving of it. So wherever there's wisdom and there are good things out in something that's beneficial, the Prophet let us know that this is the lost property of the believer. All right, so we're the most deserving of it. So whether there are personality tests and other things that you can learn, this doesn't mean we only look at our lives from a very shallow perspective. If I need to go and learn how to drive a car, I'm not going to go and look for a specific thing that can tell me how to do so, when the time that these different things were revealed, the cars didn't exist. So whether it be technology or different advances in different sciences, we have to recognize that, again, wisdom is the lost property of the believer.
Yeah, totally. No, definitely. It is always a pleasure. Jazakallah khair for your time and wonderful advice. And it was a wonderful conversation. Inshallah, it'll be beneficial to the neat parent community and beyond, inshallah. And may Allah reward you for your time and your beneficial advice, and reward you all with good in both worlds, in this dunya and the akhirah. And inshallah, we will have many who benefit from this, and will continue to benefit from obtaining the services on your website.
Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah. Appreciate you.
وياك وياك ان شاء
السلام
الله.
عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمه الله
Waalaikumsalam
وبركاته.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So,
Waalaikumsalam.